loved her experience, and I welcome that to the microphone.
Well, firstly, I announce myself on country as a visitor. I am a Waka Waka woman. Waka Waka country is one of our over 300 nations of Aboriginal peoples in these lands now called Australia. Waka Waka country is my grandmother's country, my nan's country. It is the place, it's now in the lands now called Queensland. It is the place of the bunya pines and the native grasslands. And as I announce myself as visitor, I thank you, Auntie Ali, for your acknowledgement and welcome to country here, and pay my respects to your country and to your family, and to Auntie Beryl as well, as we gather here together on Gadigal country. And I pay my respects to your country and to your family, and I thank both of you for your continued eldership and leadership for here in the Sydney area, but here for our nation, and inspiring me as a younger Aboriginal person as well. And so we do stand here on Gadigal country. Gadi, the grass tree, Gul, the peoples of the grass trees. We don't see many grass trees around here on Gadigal country today, and I always encourage people to walk softly and gently on these ancient lands. Every piece of these lands now called Australia is country. Country is beneath your feet each and every day, even if it is beneath the concrete and the bitumen and the buildings. This land holds the story, all the ceremonies and celebrations it's seen and heard and been a part of since time immemorial. As a pilgrim on this pilgrimage with the Wellspring community and in connection with the Iona community, we have walked softly and gently right across these lands now called Australia. As we've heard, this tree visually represents that journey, but it is a journey of listening to country, listening and being led by First Nations peoples of all different countries across these lands now called Australia, listening to each other. And so country, as I talk about country, that's with a capital C, and very much I emphasise that now post-referendum, as opposed to Australia as a country. And country is all lands. Country is not just land, and it's not just peoples. Country is all lands, waters, sky, trees, plants, animals, birds, fish, rocks, mountains, and all peoples. We are all part of country, and we must, as our elders have taught us from over those 300 nations, care for country, and country will care for you. This nation of Australia is still to understand fully the depths of those words. Care for country, and country will care for you. It is what has helped to sustain us as Aboriginal peoples in these lands now called Australia for since time immemorial, for millennia, for thousands of years, since Creator placed us here and gave us the law. Some people call that the dreaming, but it is a whole system of law and living. To know who the Creator is, to care for creation, to care for country, and to live in right relationship. And so Aboriginal peoples, we call everyone together. We all have a different relationship to country, but we must come together. As Aboriginal people, we feel a responsibility to non-Indigenous peoples. But you must listen, learn from, and be led by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in these lands now called Australia. Many of you would be familiar with the climate scarf. And I gifted one to Ruth Harvey at the beginning of our journey. And hands up if you knitted a climate scarf or you own one. A few people. So it was an action that I helped to lead a few years ago. But in this scarf is 100 years of the average global temperatures. So from 100 years ago in the blue to 100 years later in the red, this scarf took us to 2019. But the other part of this scarf, you're supposed to wear it on the 21st of July every year. It's part of an international movement called #ShowYourStripes. We had over 300 knitters knit a scarf around Australia and delivered them to every parliamentarian at the time that sat in the Australian Parliament. Not all of them would wear them. But as there's been a golden thread and talking about threads and ancient threads and new threads and food threads as well, I talked about this as knitting together our common threads for our common home. This planet is our common home today, and we all must care for it. But the most important thing about this scarf was that it was to spark conversations. And I hope if any of you are knitters, maybe you'll go and knit it again to keep it going. It wasn't meant to be a one-off, it's meant to keep going and keep going, to tell its story about the urgent need to take action for creation and climate justice. So it was to spark conversations, but it was also to be led by, to listen to and be led by those most impacted by climate change. We are all impacted. We are in a climate crisis, a climate catastrophe. The need is urgent. But for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, climate change began 250 years ago when Philip landed in 1788, and his first act of colonisation, because he landed in the woodland, was to cut down those trees, the beginning of deforestation and the impacts. Barangaroo, famous Aboriginal woman from the Sydney area, put her body on the line to protect the trees. She also protected a convict who stole her fishing gear. Because of the importance, knowing the Creator, caring for creation, and living in right relationship. And for me, they are three biblical mandates as an Aboriginal Christian leader. But so sadly, we need more involvement from Christians and the church, but we all must come together for our common threads, for our common home. And when we did this, and I will finish here, and as I stood at the front of Parliament House on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country, where this pilgrimage has visited in this pilgrimage around these lands now called Australia, we had this hauntingly beautiful scarf with all of these colours. But the next scarf was this one. So for the next 100 years, the reality that we face. And so this scarf was knitted especially for me as I led that action, but the need is urgent. And so as I even reflect on my life over the last 18 months, through this pilgrimage has been some of the first times in 18 months I've been asked to speak on creation and climate justice. And so we need to keep the conversations going, just as we do about the injustices facing Aboriginal people today. Voice, treaty, truth. Truth, treaty, voice. Aboriginal deaths in custody and so many others. And to finish, as I say, and to help to knit those threads together. First Nations justice, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice, Indigenous justice, and creation and climate justice are one and the same. Creation and climate justice is Aboriginal justice, is First Nations justice. And so may we all come together but be listened to and be led by the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in these lands now called Australia, and Indigenous voices around the world.